Welcome to Barbados.
Welcome to LESC.
far away. Our eyes search beyond the sky and we wonder why we don't see it. It's because Jah is reality. In the air we breathe, in the streams and trees, when birds sing and thunder rolls, when the sun rises in a child's laughter. Yes, God is in nature. Just connect with your spirit and see. Ashe.
Hello, my friends. There are a lot of things that are special about the Caribbean, about Barbados. Our people with our accents, our food, our songs, our stories, our environment with its oceans and hills and gullies and animals, our global contributions to academia, inventions, sports, statehood, humanitarianism and culture. This is a special place. But there's another thing that makes this place so special that we do not often speak about, and that is that we are a region of deep religious and spiritual tolerance and respect. When you look at the world today, and truthfully throughout the history of humankind, so many of the major wars between regions and states are fundamentally caused by the inability of individuals and groups to simply get along. In many ways, the story of humanity has been the story of disagreement as well. Disagreement about faith, about skin color, about boundary lines, about political philosophies, and of course about sovereign ownership of the earth's natural resources. Maybe this is one of the instances where small, yes, can be an advantage. Maybe the reality of living together on a small landmass has meant that ultimately we had to and continue to find a way to be appreciative at best, but amicable and respectful at worst. For unlike much of the rest of the world, we in this small place have figured out that despite our history of forced arrivals and departures, despite the isms and schisms that separate us sometimes, we must find a way for us to get along. In many ways, our ability to exist peacefully is a marvel to many. We have within our region, literally, Amerindians, Africans, Europeans, Indians, Chinese, Arabs, Americans, all coming and going for the last 500 years. And indeed, our Caribbean civilization is a reflection of that melting pot. Each of them brought with them their cultural nuances and their faith. In many instances, it would have been this faith in whichever God they worshipped that would have comforted them in the treacherous ordeal of forced migration, of slavery, and indentureship. And for those of us lucky enough not to have experienced those horrific hardships, our faith has comforted us throughout the general uncertainties of life in the tropics. Despite what has come before, we are, my friends, fundamentally a region of peace. That is why we fight so hard to keep the Caribbean Sea as a zone of peace. Despite what is to come, we are also, I should tell you, a region of faith and faiths. We are a region of spiritual diversity. We argue and we disagree, and from time to time there's a flare-up. A little ism and schism, as I said earlier. But for the most part, we understand that we live in the same place. And yes, we must find a way to get along. This is why I feel compelled that Barbados and Barbadians should offer ourselves as a global example of spiritual respect and amicable expression of faith. I also feel that the rest of the region, for the most part, will also make that similar statement. To take advantage of the opportunity that UNCTAD 15 presented, the bringing together of a global family that acknowledged and recognized that despite having different preferences, different commitments, and different spiritualities, that people can live together peacefully. It was too important an opportunity to miss, and that is why I'm so pleased that this has happened. This opportunity, my friends, is also too important not to reveal one of Barbados's more ambitious ideas. We have long felt that with the history of Codrington College, steeped as well in theology, be it at that time the Church of England, and the sheer majesty of its expansive property, it would be the ideal location for a campus of global spirituality, a place where teachers and students of Buddhism, Yoruba, Hinduism, Islam, Christianity, Judaism, Rastafarianism, Taoism, every and all faith from and around the world can meet here, can share, can contemplate, can create, can inspire, but above all else, can respect each other and live on this earth with that level of respect and tolerance. A place from which ultimately good global moral strategic leadership can be harnessed and then emanate. We hope to see this dream of ours come to reality. We hope to see a world where this good moral strategic leadership is commonplace and constant. And we hope to inspire others that if we can live together in one space irrespective of religious differences, we should be able to do it across the entire world. We want to see a world, my friends, that is better, that is more peaceful, that is more tolerant, not just for some, but for all of our citizens of the globe. Thank you for being a part of this exercise.
Good day and welcome to Codrington College, the Anglican seminary for the province of the West Indies since the 1830s. The college has served the region and the wider world well, being the first tertiary institution in the English-speaking Caribbean. It has produced teachers in addition to clergy. It has provided a foundation for future lawyers and doctors, and many of the early regional leaders in politics and business, and much more. Codrington College is an icon of regional unity and development. This holds fast to the words of the founder, doing good to men's souls while taking care of their bodies. Today, the college stands ready to join in the dream of a new day. In 2019, the college hosted the Abrahamic Faiths Conference under the theme, Peace in a World of Conflict, Building on the Common Heritage. That undertaking witnessed the participation of the Rastafarians, the Muslims, the Jews, and the Christians. It signaled college's readiness to acknowledge the common ground on which these faith traditions were built, and to seek ways through which we can journey together in peace. The intention is to move beyond this limited representation of faith groupings and endeavor to include other traditions represented in the region in building community. It is indeed a pleasure to host these final moments of UNCTAD 15, which has been a very engaging conference amid the most significant threat we have faced as a world in recent times, that of the COVID-19 pandemic. This threat has left none of us untouched and reminds us only too well of our shared humanity. If nothing else, this conference has sought to underscore this truth. As we move beyond this moment, the hope is that we take this awareness of our oneness as spiritual beings and allow it to direct the way we engage with each other. We stand on the precipice of a new day. I trust we may allow the day to dawn and not yearn for the passing night. May the thoughts shared and the opinions expressed in the next few moments be as seeds planted, and may we each undertake to nurture and protect those seeds in the day that is here. The members of the Codrington Trust, the staff and students join me in saying, welcome to Codrington College.
Welcome to UNCTAD 15, the 15th session of the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development. Every 4 years, the United Nations presents this conference to draw attention to issues that concern and affect millions around the world. COVID-19, unparalleled natural disasters, racial injustice, just to name a few that are affecting trade, investment, and development in far too many developing countries all over the world. This year begins a 4-year period when UNCTAD will be headed by the Prime Minister of Barbados, the Honorable Mia Mottley. I think all of us today would agree that UNCTAD 15 provides an amazing platform to discuss the topic of spirituality and tolerance at this unprecedented time in our history. This UNCTAD 15 conference is being held in Barbados, the country that's led by Prime Minister Motley, and it's being organized by Codrington College, which is the oldest Anglican theological college in the Western Hemisphere. We are joined by there who will also be participating in this conference, which has the unique theme, spiritually and tolerance, spirituality and tolerance. When Prime Minister Motley addressed the United Nations last month, one of the several points she made was, we say the same thing over and over and over and come to naught. We cannot do that anymore. The fact is that everyone has the same desire for life, regardless of the size of their country or their religious beliefs. Our three presenters are diverse minds from three of the world's largest religious faiths, Hindu, Muslim, and Christian. They are Liasha Prime, Director of Women's Programming at Darul Hiraj Islamic Center in Virginia and founder of the DC Muslim Women's Conference. We also have the Right Reverend and Right Honorable Dr. Rowan Williams, member of the House of Lords he was, and he is the former Archbishop of Canterbury. And we also have Her Holiness Sri Jayanthi, is the founder and president of the Sri Jai Satya Mission in India and the Jai Mission in Trinidad and Tobago. Welcome to our conference this morning. Liasha Prime, you are going to be first. You are the Director of Women's Programming at Darul Hiraj Islamic Center in Virginia and founder of the DC Muslim Women's Conference. Yustaha converted to Islam more than 20 years ago after being a youth ambassador to Morocco and Senegal. After having participated in several circles of knowledge in the United States, Liasha decided to pursue religious studies abroad. She studied Arabic and the Quran in Egypt. The work that she's most committed to and enjoys has been the development of Islamic programming and rites of passage programs for youth and adults. The majority of her life has been spent as an educator and activist. She is most passionate about combining Islamic studies, cultural art, activism, and service for the purpose of training leaders to rise above whatever challenges stand in their way and that of the communities they serve. In addition to her full-time work, she is the co-founder and executive director of Barak Incorporated, an organization committed to training Muslim women in traditional Islamic sciences with a focus on modern application. Sister Liasha also teaches courses that challenges race and gender in the Muslim community and spirituality. Well, welcome again to our conference, and I invite you to begin your presentation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tate. I deeply appreciate that. It is an honor and a privilege to be a part of this prestigious event. You know, congratulations on reaching the 15th conference. SubhanAllah. This is something that is truly remarkable and something that we should all be striving towards. As you mentioned, your prime minister said that we're always saying the same thing, but yet what changes? And so my hope and my prayer for this event, for this 15th conference, is that it sparks that exact change that we're looking for, that it actually spurs us into the type of action that delivers us out of some of the harm as well as the challenges of our time. I'd like to start by a quote by Helen Keller, where she says, until the great mass of the people shall be filled with a sense of responsibility for each other's welfare, social justice can never be attained. And so when I think about, there are two aspects of this quote that really hit home and actually ring true with our religious tradition. And that is this sense of coming together, understanding that we have not only an interconnectedness, but that we have the responsibility to not only view each other through the gaze of compassion, but that we have the responsibility of following that into action that delivers people out of the systemic racism, the systemic sexism, and the poverty of our time. As I begin to look at the title of this conference today, which is Spirituality and Tolerance, I would be remiss of my duty if I didn't mention what is the meaning of spiritual, what is spirituality? What role does it have to play, of course, in delivering not only tolerance, but in delivering change to the world? Because a lot of times spirituality is looked at something that's not only personal, but it's something ethereal. It's something that should be kept only for sacred spaces, only for sanctuaries, only in someone's private time when they're communing with their Lord. But in reality, if spirituality does not have a role in how we are dealing with not only our society, but being able for us to recognize how connected we are globally, then we have missed the mark. And that begins to speak to the religious leaders of our times. It begins to speak to those who claim to be believers. Where are we? Where is our voice? Where not only is our voice, but where are we showing up on the front lines so that people begin to recognize that spirituality is not something that should be set on the back burner, but in fact, it's something that it's something that pushes us into compassion. It's love. It was actually the foundation of such great movements as the civil rights movement in America. In fact, the civil rights movement in America would not have been successful without spirituality. It would not have been the movement that was known by the world except for its spirituality. That those who are moved in terms of the anti-slavery abolitionist movement, which we definitely need an abolitionist movement of our time, they were moved because of their spirituality. Those who are moved as it relates to helping the women of the world fight against the sex crimes and the sex trafficking, they do that because of their compassion, because of the light of their spirituality. And so with that being said, as we open this conference, recognizing the great challenges before us, we sit in a very unique time where COVID-19 has placed us right in the middle of being able to recognize what poverty can do, what it can deprive people of, not only what poverty can do, but in addition to medical apartheid, which is an oppression that is induced upon those who are impoverished, so they're not able to receive the same type of medical care or attention. We began that this pandemic has highlighted for us the grave indifferences and the problems that we face when it comes to gender and in politics and gender and economics. And so as we are placed in this great position to be able to see our challenges, what we are also able to see is how spirituality plays such a great role in being able to give not only our individual, but our world a sense of hope, a deep sense of resilience, a sense of the necessity of us coming together in order for us to have a more positive, brighter future. And so I simply call us to this today as we sit in the middle of moral crisis of multiple types. I say, of course, the challenge before us today is the same as it was before, the same as it was yesterday, and the same as it was when we watched George Floyd be murdered slowly by 8 minutes and 46 seconds. We say that it is our responsibility of those who claim to be spiritual at all, to be believers of any type of hope and morality, that we have the moral responsibility to come together in a way that only this verse in the Quran speaks to when it says, وَاعْتَصِمُوا بِحَبْلِ اللَّهِ جَمِيعًا وَلَا تَفَرَّقُوا. That hold on to the rope of God and do not be divided. That in order for us to be successful in this fight, to raise the flag of morality, to raise the flag of spiritual activism that brings about systemic change, that we must come together as those voices of believers, respecting each other, recognizing our differences while insisting on our commonalities and allowing those commonalities between us to be a means of and a catalyst for true transformation of our world. Thank you so much for listening. I look forward to your questions and for the next portion of this conference and what these leaders of today will deliver for us tomorrow.
And now we go to our next presenter, the Right Reverend and the Right Honorable Dr. Williams of Oystermouth. He was Bishop of Canterbury from 2002 to 2012. Prior to this, he worked as a bishop in Wales and also in Cambridge and Oxford as a teacher of theology. In December 2013, Bishop Williams stepped down as Archbishop of Canterbury and entered the House of Lords as a life peer. He continued his work with the church until 2020 as Master of Magdalene College, Cambridge, and also Chair of the United Nations International Development Charity Aid Christian Aid. Dr. Williams has written over 30 books on theology, philosophy, literature, and current affairs, including early and patristic Christianity. Spirituality and religious ascetics are others. He is acknowledged internationally as an outstanding thinker, writer, scholar, and teacher. He has been involved in many theological, ecumenical, and educational commissions. Reverend Dr. Williams, I invite you now to give your presentation.
Thank you very much indeed, and thank you to all who have made this event possible. As has already been said, I feel a deep sense of honor at being invited to address this group and look forward very much to the reaction and the further questions and comments that we shall receive. Let me begin with two observations about the word spirituality. In Christian scripture, the Holy Spirit, the Spirit of God, is associated with communion, not just communication, not just community, but communion, which is the active exchange of life with one another. Life in the Spirit, life which manifests spiritual qualities, is therefore going to be life which manifests the sharing of life. It's going to be a life which manifests connection. Connection between human beings, connections between human beings and the rest of creation, connection between human beings and God. When in Christian scripture, for example, St. Paul writes about what it is to live in the Spirit, the qualities that he lists are the qualities that make for sharing: peace, patience, openness, forgiveness. So that's the first point. A spiritual life, as has already been said very effectively by Yasha this afternoon, a spiritual life is not one that is remote and isolated. It is one that builds and recognizes connection at the very deepest level. And the second dimension of that is the recognition that spirit is the root in us of our own sharing in and our own reflection of the divine life. Whether we know it or not, there is something in each one of us profoundly connected to the creator of the universe, and so profoundly connected to the rest of the creation. We may not know it, we may ignore it, we may undermine it in all kinds of ways, and yet we are already connected. To lead a spiritual life in the fullest sense is to recognize that fact about our humanity. A fact which should tell us that naked competition, violent individualism, rivalry are not simply bad, but unnatural. They go against the very grain of our humanity. So that when we seek to live in a spiritual way, in a connected way, to live in communion, we are living in the most natural way that human beings can. And of course, this means that a great deal of our normal habits are deeply unnatural. We are pushing against the grain of what it is to be human when we seek to trample on one another and to deny one another's right. Spirituality then is about communion, and it is about the depth in us, in each one of us, that calls out for attention and for reverence. Intolerance of others is, among other things, a refusal of communion and a refusal of respect. It is the denial of the spirit. Intolerance is to say, I have no need to respect the hidden depth of another, and it's to say I'm not really deeply connected with the other. And that's why, although, as I shall say in a moment, the word tolerance in itself is not enough, we can at least say that intolerance is the very opposite of the spiritual life. I think here of some words from a great 20th century Christian poet in my own homeland of Wales, who wrote a wonderful poem in the 1950s with the title in the Welsh language, Beth yw dyn, What is a Human Being? And he asks there, what is it to recognize the humanity of another? And he answered, it is to find the same root beneath the branches. In the Welsh language, un raidd dan y ganghennau. So finding one root under the branches is part of the life of spirit. And at our present juncture in history, we need more than ever that recognition, that sense of communion. Because the problems that face us, whether they are of environmental crisis, the disruptions in economies around the world, or the spread of pandemic disease, the problems we face are all of them problems which none of us can face alone. None of us has the luxury of saying, I do not need the voice and the perspective of the stranger. We never know what gift the stranger will bring. So we approach ready to listen and ready to receive. Two further thoughts, very briefly, on this. The implication of what I've said so far is that to lead a life in the Spirit is to lead a life in which I do not have to be God. I do not have to pretend that I need to be in charge of everything, that I need to be organizing and controlling everything. I am called to be part of a world of interaction and exchange and mutual gift. And to live in the presence and in the strength of God is to live like that, not to pretend to be a God detached from the world, seeking to be all-powerful and seeking to enslave others or to enslave the material world and exploit it for my own agenda. I don't have to be God. And the second thing, to live in the Spirit, is to live knowing that I am always able and always free to learn and to grow. To be human is to grow. To be human is to learn. To be fed, to be nourished, to be ready for my life to be enriched by others. And when we talk of spiritual humility, we don't mean self-abasement. We mean rather the generous readiness to receive what the generous gift of another can give. Now, in our world at the moment, very little of this seems evident. We retreat more and more into disconnected, competitive corners. We have a ludicrous and insane international financial system which consistently pauperizes most of the world's population. We have, sadly, in so many places, a political leadership which plays on the fears and the self-protective instinct of people. We have a climate in which generosity and the willingness to learn are not easy to see. In the months of the pandemic that we've endured together across the globe, we've seen two terrible kinds of inequality arise. what I'd call an inequality of risk and an inequality of reward. Some people are more at risk than others because of race, because of poverty, because of gender, because of the work they do. And we've also seen how deeply unequal the rewards are for people in our society when carers, people who keep the wheels of our society running, people who do the necessary tasks that enable our daily lives, when they are rewarded, recompensed at such a low level compared with the tiny minority of super wealthy. The world is a world where risk and reward are deeply unequal. And in that sense, the world we live in is a world which is profoundly unspiritual, which needs to be called to account. And our own behavior in the churches and in faith communities also needs to be called to account, and each one of us has to be called to account. Finally, though, the good news is that we are, whatever happens, still anchored, connected. Our humanity is still rooted in the reality of one another and the reality of our Maker, the transcendent reality from which we arise. Nothing changes that. Our task is to go on rediscovering that and sharing the vision of it with one another in a way which we hope and pray will transform our relationships. The challenge is how we build a society like that, a society which does justice to human nature, to what we truly are, which does justice to the fact that we need one another to be human. And that is the spiritual vision which takes us beyond mere tolerance to love and gratitude for one another. Tolerance alone can be patronizing and distant, but love and involvement, true investment in one another's well-being, that is what will take us forward into a world more natural, more at peace, more rich and flourishing, the world for which we consistently pray. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Williams, for your presentation. Our next presenter, Her Holiness Sri Jayanti Kumara Swami, lovingly called Swamiji, is a spiritual leader, humanitarian, and activist from India. She is the founder and president of the Sri Jai Sat Mission in India and the Jai Sati Mission of Trinidad and Tobago. Both organizations assist less privileged families, youth in education, and conduct women counseling and spiritual activities, such as Swamiji's signature vibratory meditation and healing. In 2016, Swamiji initiated a public campaign in India to stop caste discrimination by calling on spiritual leaders and the government to allow people of the lower castes to take the holy bath that had never been allowed at one of the world's largest religious events. Her Holiness Swamiji was also adopted as a daughter of the Ashanti Kingdom and was adopted by His Royal Highness Otumfuwa Osei Tutu II. She was given the title Ya Ashanti Wa, named after the Queen Warrior of Ghana, as recognition for her work to encourage unity and oneness through spirituality. Swamiji has conducted spiritual events in more than 20 countries. We now invite you, Your Holiness, to give your presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Tate. Namo Narayana. Namaste. Good day to everyone. I salute the Supreme Force. Let me pray to the Supreme Force to bless this world. The Supreme Force is the secret behind the creation and extension of the entire world. The Supreme Force has indeed become the world. Let this world become fertile, prosper, stand eternally, and shine forth. I would like to acknowledge the Right Reverend and Right Honorable Bishop Williams and Ustada Aisha Prime, and special thank you, Father Michael Clark. It's my pleasure to be a part of this conversation. I want to congratulate the Honorable Mia Amor Matli, Prime Minister of Barbados, for including a discussion of spirituality in the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development. Research indicates that religious tolerance has a great influence on trade and development. Therefore, understanding oneness is of paramount importance to encourage global prosperity through trade. Trade does not only improve business, but it also connects communities, cultures, and races. The topic today is spirituality and tolerance. But first we must understand what is spirituality. It is like a triangle. It is the connections of the mind, soul, and body. When you understand spirituality, then tolerance will naturally be there whether you like something or not. It should not be mistaken for religion. Spirituality is the basement. It is like a big tree. Religion is the formation of community to unite a group of people. Religious are like fruit of this tree. The religious were formed because you cannot hold one umbrella to protect the entire world from the rain. Everyone keeps their own umbrella. So religion was formed to safeguard the community. But spirituality is oneness. We can only achieve true prosperity through oneness. All babies come from the mother womb. Never has a mother given birth in another method. The concept of oneness started in this way. The sun gives light to the entire world. The sun brings light to all of humanity. It never discriminates between religions, races, class, or socio-economic status. God is one, and all of creation is not separate from the world. But we have forgotten this truth. A supreme force that moves this world is omnipresent in every soul. To know oneness is to know who you are. To inspire oneness and achieve prosperity, you have to let others around you to live in the same way you expect yourself to live. We need three main tools to do so. The three tools of unity are understanding, acceptance, and adjustment is needed today's world. Even though there are different people, we all have things in common like food, desires, passions, and life. When you want to live and enjoy the comfort of life, you should know that others also have the same right to get the needs and comfort for living. You should have the mind that ensures the same level of comfort to eat and everything around you. As the hands go in sequence, one behind the other to build the nest. Likewise, humans should support each other to protect this world. We can prevent any disaster through a unity of minds. Do not think of the change in form. Do not think of the change of body. Think only of the change of mind and proceed with the life. Only unity can bring prosperity. Everybody know unity is strength. Let me remind you that the great universe was born only when all planets united. When you understand oneness, you will have tolerance, understanding, acceptance, and adjustments. If you do not have tolerance, the mustard seed wouldn't change the taste. This understanding will improve trade. When trade is improved, then humanity will raise its power and development will come automatically. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Holiness Sri Jayanthi Kumaraswamy. Thank you very much for your presentation. Dr. Williams, I know you have to leave us first. I know you have another very important engagement. So my first question is to you. What must world and religious leaders do to facilitate peace and spiritual tolerance?
I think it's crucial that all spiritual communities in the world, whether they are traditional religious communities or less traditional ones, should continue to insist, as has been said so eloquently just now, to insist that no part of this human world is able to flourish and to live without the others. It's not that the problems and the sufferings of others are distant on the other side of the globe. They are our problems immediately. So that's the first thing. We need to be quite clear that that is the attitude we must bring. But secondly, we have to ask, what are the institutional vehicles? What are the institutions that will actually allow us to collaborate effectively in the face of the crises that we confront? During the period of the pandemic, we've seen some kinds of international cooperation, but not enough. We have, for example, not seen an effective international vehicle for making sure that all nations have the same kind of access to vaccines. The great gift to all of us of the Black Lives Matter movement in the last 12 months has been to make us ask that question: who is not here, who is not represented, who is not being heard? And we need, in every local community, in churches and faith communities, in political communities, to be asking that question.
But Sister Aisha, as an activist and a law scholar, what do you think is the most important issue facing us today with regard to race and religion?
Thank you, Mr. Tate, for this question. There are a number of theological challenges that we as religious leaders must be willing to face. There are a number of, for example, that when many times we look at spiritual texts, or we look at some of the ideas, particularly some of the exegesis of the scholars who went before us, the language by which they explained certain things has very deep racial implications, causing us to sometimes reflect upon or reflect upon who has higher religious leanings, or who has a higher spiritual connection. A lot of times it's not so much about God's view of race as it is, of course, about man's view of the race and our differences. And to be honest, if it's not something that we're willing to speak out about in a very honest way in some of the more closed circles of religious scholars, then it's not we're not going to be able to deliver that clear message to the masses.
Thank you. Let me come to Your Holiness Sri Jayanthi. What must world and religious leaders do to facilitate peace and spiritual tolerance?
Very, very, thank you, Mr. Tate. That's a very wonderful question. I expected that question, because very important that world leader should have patient. Patient means is a spiritual patient. That means I told spirituality is heart, mind, and soul. That three-tier system, in judiciary, even in the law and order, judiciary, executor, and these are all three main tier system is there. Likewise, how they handling the three-tier system of judiciary, executory, and law making body, like that, the leader should have the spiritual tolerance. Spiritual is not only conducting the rituals or prayer other than. But the world leader should have the spiritual patience to meditate. Because why I'm telling to meditate? To bring the country in unity of humanity means. I explain about meditation. While God gave two things. One is sleep. Sleep is a unconscious meditation. Meditation is the conscious sleep. In this post-tract world, everybody having media and digital world. So they're not getting a good sleep, first of all. When the person is not getting good sleep, then the mind will lose the patience. So the meditation for the leader is must. 5 minutes, at least in their life, 5 to 10 minutes. If they meditate, number one, meditation. So they know every human being, when they get up, they will straight away to brush the teeth, like that day-to-day life, like that meditation should be part in their life. If they follow the meditation, I promise here, 100%, the patience will come to every leader and they have own energy, because we will heal the cosmic energy from the galaxy. So the leader will get the energy and they know how to bring the society up. So if the leader started to do the meditation, you see the entire world will be changed through leader. Because the leader is to lead the society. Leader, lead the society. So
there's so much happening in the world today. There's so much anger. And people are not forgiving. And people are not tolerant of each other anymore. What do you say about the need to be forgiving? I know the scripture talks a lot about being forgiving, forgive your neighbor, and so on. But what do you say to people around us every day? We hear so many people are shooting each other, and so many people are stabbing each other. And there's so much of this going on in almost every country. Let me hear from you first, Sri Jayanthi. What do you say to people about the need to be forgiving?
Forgiving is the people should have that type of mind to forgive people. Forgiveness is one thing to remove our, I don't know, you understand the word karma? That means remove our sin. When we forgive and forget, then our life will be very supreme and top. Because one day we are going to die. That everybody knows. So that is the end of our life. So forgot that. But when we forgive, there is nothing in this world. So I can tell a small story about that. You know Alexander the Great? He traveled along the world. And finally he told the minister, when I die, please show my hand. Nothing I bring, and when I'm going, I'm not taking anything. What we are going to take when we leave the society? If we want to change the people, we need to forgive them. When we thinking about them, they did to me that, they betray me, they gossip me very badly. So we are not living good life. We are holding the bad burden of the people's mind. How the God will believe inside. So when we forgive, we vomited all the bad things out. So we release from the stress, we release from the anxiety, and people nowadays all are depression, suicide, because there is nobody to forgive. So we need to forgive It's very important word. It's a very, very normal word, but it's a very, very powerful word. When you forgive, see, Jesus became a God. When Prophet Muhammad forgive who betrayed him, he became a top in the world. You see, in Hinduism culture, plenty stories, I don't know, you may know or not, is Ram, Sita Ram, like that. When they forgive, they became a God. We don't want to be a God, but we can live peaceful life. See, in this world, everything is cost track. Now this world. So we need to believe in very peace. So if we want to peace, for me, peace is God. So if we want to live peaceful life, we need to forgive and forget.
The three presenters we have with us are from three different faiths. So we hear a lot about interfaith ministry. Is the world moving towards that in a push for spiritual tolerance?
If I may, and perhaps after this, you'll forgive me if I have to go.
Yes, indeed.
Briefly, it seems to me that the great religious traditions of the world are part of the solution to the problems of humankind if they are willing to live alongside, engaging seriously, respectfully, sometimes critically with one another. If they fail to do that, they will be part of the problem, not the solution. I'm a Christian. My loyalty is given to the Christian faith and to Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior. That doesn't mean that I have nothing to learn from those of other traditions who will enrich my humanity. I would hope that my witness may enrich theirs. Together, that witness may enrich those around. So we're not moving towards a unified single world faith, but we are towards exactly what's been described, a real mutual gratitude and awareness of difference that is respectful, engaged and intelligent. And it seems to me one of the greatest mistakes we make these days to suppose that there's something called religion, which is intrinsically a bad and retrogressive thing, and we need to move forward to the sunlit highlands of humanism and rationalism. Well, I'm not holding my breath. The evidence so far is not brilliant on that front. So if we are to be part of that solution, part of that future, we need an affirmative and intelligent engagement with one another, which is why an event like this is so much to be welcomed. Thank you very much for allowing me to be part of this conversation. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. And I wish you success in everything that you're doing today.
Thank you so much.
To carry on from what you just said, we have a climate of religious extremism.
Yes.
And this is sometimes leading to ungodly atrocities.
Yes.
How would you respond to that, Aisha?
I think that I'm so grateful that you brought this up because our religious extremism that is happening all over the globe from a number of different traditions is something that we have to be very honest about, very straightforward about. It is something that there must be hard work done on a fundamental level. And I'm not a big fan necessarily of the word reform, but there is something to be said about the way that even religion and when spirituality is removed from religion, then you find these types of extremism exist. I've had the opportunity to sit down with some who do have religious extremist ideas. And what I always find consistent in them is that their understanding of religion and God is very small. That their understanding even of the role of spirituality in the depth of their soul is usually very limited. That usually they're speaking from a deeply traumatized state around their political, social, economic conditions. And they have confused that or been misled to believe that is a part of their soul.
Thank you. You've actually spoken to the theme of UNCTAD this year, from inequality and vulnerability to prosperity for all. What should the United Nations, the countries, be doing to move us from this inequality and vulnerability to prosperity for all?
I really understand this question. First, I will tell about what is lacking. See, the extremist or intolerance, these are all negative words because of no vitamin M. Vitamin M lacking. So everybody going in different path. Vitamin M means money. M for money. Vitamin deficiency. Because of vitamin M deficiency, the people going in different path. They need to live whatever they want. Luxurious life. Nowadays, everything. They are getting anything. See how we are. I'm India. You are in America. And we are meeting each other in digital world. Everybody want everything. People coming to me and asking only money. Never, people till now. Nobody asked about spirituality or safeguard. So United Nations need to have every country, they need to have one councils to lecture about what is life, because this is very important. Spiritual guru only going and everything. But our United Nations need to do this type of not advice, this type of lecture to bring the people unity, non-religious activities.
Thank you. We have 3 members of the audience who are at Codrington College. Because of COVID restrictions, we have to limit the number of people who are there. But I want to welcome Howard Bethel, Derek Murray, and Hania Bulbulia. I hope I pronounced your name correctly, Hania. I'm going to invite you now to ask questions of our presenters.
Thank you, Mr. Tate. If you permit me to start, I would like to direct my question to Sister Aisha. In the light of the socioeconomic fallout that countries around the world are facing due to the COVID-19 pandemic, do you think that as an interfaith community, we are doing enough together to help those in need, regardless of what their faith may be, or what their nation, their religious status may be? What do you suggest interfaith communities should be doing at this time to assist persons in need?
So there are 3 parts to your question. And so the first one is, are we doing enough? No. I was recently able to spend quite a bit of time in West Africa during the pandemic, and to be able to see, of course, many of these, because, one of the largest wealths of West Africa is its coastline. And so while many are coming and enjoying its coastline, when those borders were shut down, those who were surviving, of course, on the tourism of that were greatly impacted. So the average worker who's, working as a restaurant worker, who's working in the service industry of any type, were deeply affected. And subhanAllah, the relief was not enough. Not enough even from a world standpoint. And, even when it came to, of course, vaccinations, many of the vaccinations that were sent to these countries much later were those of the same vaccinations that had been rejected by some of other Western countries, kind of even furthering the question, are we as deeply, do we see them as ourselves? Are we giving them what we ourselves would not take as a healing or a cure? The bottom line is that while we are increasing in technical training and we are increasing in education, we're not increasing in terms of giving the type of economic support. Sometimes we're even burdening some of these poor economies with very intense loans, that they would not be able to pay back, further burdening them economically. And so it is important as a religious community that we deliver aid in a different way than we have in the past, that doesn't have the strings of conversion attached or the strings of proselytizing attached to it, but that it has the hand of humanity attached to it.
Thank you. Let's go back to the other 2 presenters at Codrington College. I don't know which of you will ask this question. Go on.
Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam.
My question is directed to Sister Aisha. There's this perception that women in faith communities are not expected to be leaders. As a female Muslim scholar, what are your thoughts?
Oh, we find that across religion, where women are, still thought to be delegated to a certain domestic work, and not necessarily trained to be leaders. Even a lot of times when they are trained, the opportunity doesn't always exist. So we have a great deal of work, although I will say we are getting better. I will say there are a number of movements that are pushed for the empowerment of women. I even think about the wonderfulness of this panel, and to have two female religious leaders representing. I think that is definitely a plus and a progression. But we have a lot of work to do, even in terms of, again, from our young women, that although we're talking about leadership, we are still selling them the message that their beauties and their bodies are what will get them far. And so we have a lot of work to do in terms of developing, even within religious communities. We have a lot of work to do of reviewing spiritual text and religious text, and developing a better and a higher understanding, and to look at our scholars of old as well as our prophets, to look at them from the truth of what they say, not from our own cultural as well as our own societal visions.
Okay, we have three persons at Codrington, and we heard from two. So let's have the last question.
Yes, I'm sorry that Dr. Williams is not here to answer this. Maybe after he could submit his answer. I want to touch on the question of tolerance. And I really do appreciate the fact that he went beyond the notion of mere tolerance to the idea that we have to not be afraid to embrace the other. I want to ask, though, and this is acknowledging Aisha's nuanced response to not relinquishing your belief just because you are willing to accept the other. How will it be possible for those religious traditions, such as Christianity, Islam, where your metaphysics and your spiritual journey definitely says there's only one truth, one path to your God that will be accepted? How will you reconcile that with the fact that there are others who insist that there are alternative paths? And this would be a trivial question, and we could always focus on commonalities if it weren't for the fact that this goes to the heart of people's existence and their souls. And added to that, it would be an easy feat to simply accept differences and focus on commonalities if we did not also want to proselytize and insist that others follow us, because if they don't, then they will lose their souls. They will end up in whichever version of hell your particular spiritual tradition has. How do we reconcile that? Because it is a question of individual spirituality versus collective spirituality, and it is at the point of collective spirituality, and especially when it rises to the level of the state, where the state is entwined with the particular religion, that then we have fundamental issues of intolerance and wars.
I think I really appreciate your question. It's a very deep question and speaks to the heart of many things. But it's interesting. There are several verses in the Quran that speaks to when God is calling them to the belief in his oneness, and he's calling them to accept that he is the creator. And at the end of the verse, he never says, at the end of this verse, I'm going to send you directly to hell. He says the God is all forgiving, most merciful, right? And even when the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, would address the people, he would give them the truth. He would say to them that your Lord, thy God, is one, right? That he would speak to them about the difference between the Almighty and the power of what it means to be Almighty. And then at the end of it, there wasn't the statement of, if you don't accept it, then I'm going to kill you. The end of the statement was, and then God shall judge in between you and I, right? So there is a difference between that there must be some forced acceptance in the moment, because la ikraha fi din, which a verse in the Quran says there is no compulsion in religion. So that's the first aspect. And there is a difference between I'm holding my religious belief, and yes, I hold it to be true. But two things about it. That does not mean that I don't, number one, I don't know how to coexist with you. The other thing is that, for example, I can, as they say, the law of allowance, I can allow you to, of course, to believe as you believe, while at the same time recognizing that tolerance doesn't mean that I need to melt my belief or my convictions away in order to exist with you, that I can allow you to have your same religious belief. For example, for many years, we don't enjoy that beauty and luxury today. But for a number of centuries, Christians, Muslims, and Jews lived together peacefully in the city of Jerusalem. For hundreds of years. Not only that, we found during the time of the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, he sent a large group of his followers to live in what was then considered Christendom in Abyssinia, right, under a Christian leader. They sought political asylum, and they lived inside of a very peaceful society, and that was his directive. We find that even inside, years later, inside of Medina, we even find a multitude of those who have belief, but there's one rule, right? There's one rule inside of this, and that's no aggression, right? No aggression.
Let us go back then to Howard. Howard, one question from you.
Certainly. Once again, Ms. Aisha, I love your passion as an activist. And I would like to know, what would be your charge to the interfaith community to stop or curb systemic and individual racism?
It is a charge indeed. I think it becomes incumbent upon the religious communities to come together. And there are a number of religious conferences as well, that it becomes incumbent for us to tell the truth about certain textual textual misunderstandings, but textual differences that we have, and to begin to speak about this. We have to be able to tell the truth about where some of these racial ideologies stem from, that exist inside of society. So that's one thing, that when we're able to tell ourselves the truth, even from an internal perspective, then we have a much more united message when we're delivering, not just united, but truthful. Right. And truth in this moment is important, because people can smell dishonesty from a mile away. And so, we can talk about, for example, racial tolerance, but we see it, right, being played out on the world stage when we see, for example, the medical apartheid that exists during this pandemic. We see it in the number of economic atrocities, or how the Haitian refugees were being treated at the border. We see it. And so it's just necessary for us to put our faith where our mouth is. So there are a number of things that I'd love to see us come together and to form policy. I'd like to, there's so much commonality that there's enough from each one of us to deliver it from the pulpit, from the minbar, from the place of religious, a different message, deliver different text, as well as to see us in action on the front line.
Thank you.
Okay, I know they always say ladies first, but I'm going to do the lady last, and I'm going to come to you, Derek, for your question.
Yes. I want to go to a concrete example. And In Haiti, as we speak, we have Christians who are delivering aid. And I love the point made earlier by Aisha that we shouldn't have food for souls. Delivering aid, but at the same time, have serious difficulties with the traditional spirituality of voodoo in Haiti. And so rather than tolerate or embrace or allow to coexist this tradition, very often they're seeking to remove it and to even blame the fate of Haiti on these traditions. In Guyana, in Brazil, their shrines being destroyed by the day. So I would like to ask, what would be her approach to the coexistence of other traditional spiritualities and their practices in a common space?
I think the brother was speaking to something that is a deeper reality. And the deeper reality that he spoke to is that things that are of spiritual practice and belief stemming from Africa have already the stigma of racism attached to it. There's already this belief that anything coming out of Africa, anything that is inherently Black, must be evil, it must be demonic, it must be it must be something that is not rooted in God, or that is not rooted in a real spiritual tradition. This is something that is also a part of the way that spirituality and race intersect. This is one of the challenges we begin to see where race intersects with our understanding of religion. And I want to at least just speak to that in the sense that it's a conversation that must be revisited on multitude of levels. And again, him talking about tolerance, that are those people allowed? Are they even a part of the religious conversation? That we don't actually, it becomes necessary for us to begin to listen with a different ear, to listen with a different heart. Because even in myself, as I lived and spent quite a bit of time in West Africa, the fact that it's already dismissed, and we could, we don't have time to talk about where the origin, when that began, but the fact that it's already dismissed as something that has no real basis or real spirituality. Not only is it dismissive, there is a deep racist component to it, and furthermore, it says that they're not even allowed to come to the table, that they're not even worthy of a voice at the table of spirituality and tolerance. And that's something that as religious leaders we definitely need to revisit. We need to listen differently. We need to extend our hearts. It requires a deep level of patience. It requires a stilling of the spirit to be able to hear someone that we have been trained to automatically remove and view them as not of God.
Okay, Hania, we're coming to you for the last question.
Yes, my question is directed to Sister Aisha. How can social media be used to encourage young people to have faith and enlighten them spiritually to make the right decisions so they can prosper into leaders of tomorrow?
So social media it's a powerful tool. And it's either a powerful tool for goodness, or it's a powerful tool. It can be a powerful tool to develop serious challenges. For example, it has been, we know that excessive social media plays deeply into not only the self-esteem, but the mental health, emotional well-being of those who are over consuming it. However, it being a powerful tool, it is the opportunity for a global message. For example, even us being able to use this method of social media in order to deliver a message to a global audience. So that then literally delivering something that you would have to have a certain position, a certain status in order to go to that place, to be invited to that place, to be a part of it, that now it's something that you could even have access to within your own home, allowing us to be educated in a way that we weren't before, allowing us to have access to conversation as well as certain religious discourse that we weren't able to see before. And so social media gives that opportunity. Of course, you can go on YouTube, you can click a number of things. Sometimes even some of our scholars and teachers are on Instagram and delivering just positive spiritual messages right into our own home. Even for myself, as you know, Kumero Swami, what she was mentioning, Shri was mentioning, even I do a class on Islamic meditation right on Zoom, and people are able to log in. And so it does offer that opportunity for basically for a global message to reach you right within your home. It offers that opportunity also to be able to learn in circles that one may not have had access to. But at the same time, there must be careful monitoring. And the reason I say that, especially with our young people, is because everyone who is on social media, is not necessarily a scholar. Every voice that is, being delivered into our homes is not a positive voice or a voice that should be listened to for their own personal relationship with Allah, with their own personal relationship with God. Everyone who, is on the screen is not necessarily going to be someone that would be a means of upliftment and guidance. And so it's something to be a powerful tool that can be used for positivity, but also can be very challenging to navigate. And so it does become necessary upon us to be careful with that.
Okay, we want to thank you, Sri Jayanthi. We want to thank you, Aisha Prime. And we also want to thank Reverend Dr. Rowan Williams for participating in this presentation, participating in this conference. We want to thank you who are at Codrington College. We want to thank you for participating. Thanks to the Prime Minister of Barbados for conceptualizing this conference, and thanks to Dr. Michael Clark, Principal of Codrington College, for his work in coordinating the conference. We also thank UNCTAD for providing the opportunity for presenters and so many other diverse minds to collaboratively break barriers and go beyond what's been before to, as Prime Minister Mofty said in her address to the United Nations, find the moral, global, strategic leadership to solve those problems that are within our purview. As I close, let us creatively work on solutions to those challenges that face all of us, all of God's creation.
Out of crisis and catastrophe comes opportunity, yeah, for real change in the world economy, to reduce vulnerability and inequality. So we coming together virtually to expand opportunities for developing countries at UNCTAD 15. Solving trade issues, youth issues, and gender issues too. Civil society and creative industries are part of the call to bring prosperity for all. Small island, big island. much more than the beach. Small country, big reach, touching the world virtually. We might be small, but proud people, we standing tall. Creative and hardworking, we bring Barbados to you. If you can't come to Barbados, we bring Barbados to you. If you can't fly to Barbados, we take Barbados